describe your core values framework, or do you have a core values framework? Or I don't want to assume anything.
I think I don't, but I'm a very value-driven person in the way that I've been doing a few kind of seminars where we've learned to prioritize values, and I've realized that it's in fact the defense of my key values that brings the struggle, but that also can bring the power, the clarity, the success if I get the prioritization right. Meaning, make an example. I think my number one value um, in a native peaceful state is love. Yeah. So love is something that I just choose because I feel drawn to it. I feel, for me, real strength, even as a man, is identifying with vulnerability and compassion, kindness, being gentle, taking back the ego, and that all manifests in that value of love. Just something's nagging, something's hurting, something's whatever burning. Yeah, just pour that love on it, and it will be fine. So, but this is the relaxed state that when are we in that? Maybe that 1 hour on the day where I'm with you on that amazing
Yeah.
call. We just have an amazing conversation and relax back. But then there's these other hours where the kids want something, the wife wants something, work wants something, and I want something, and ooh, we're in kind of trouble state. So over there, I'm switching to growth. So my number one value then becomes growth. And what is interesting, no matter what you ask me, my second value is freedom. So how do I now get this right? Like I'm love first in a relaxed state, then freedom kind of second. But sometimes love is changing to growth, and growth is something that I explained this earlier when I kind of gave you this interpretation of how I'm understanding the mission of your podcast. I like growth is something that I'm forcing. Growth is something where I'm going into deficits because I'm comparing the present to the past, the present to the future, myself to others. And I'm asking for results. I'm asking others, I'm asking the universe, I'm asking myself, which is a good thing because it brings energy into momentum, but it can also be ending up very miserably if I don't, protect my boundaries, if I'm becoming greedy or too selfish, or I'm, not putting love first anymore. So what I want to say is that for me, defending the values, and even more important, defending my state to be in that value where I feel naturally home becomes the number one thing for what I'm going into the gym. And I'm going into the gym to do crazy workouts because I'm teaching my body, my system, how to, hold true in these moments of, let's say, reprioritization of where we're going into war with our values. But I'm
Yeah.
also going into my mental gym that I'm doing every day to understand, wait, where am I? Am I in this stressed kind of growth, number one, or am I in this relaxed, meditative, blissful state of I can just pour love on anything that needs love? Um, and yeah, I think this is, if you would ask me for like, what is your belief system around your values? What is your framework? That is my framework that I understand. Um, I have a natural tendency to something if I'm relaxed, and then I have this kind of natural tendency to something else when I'm stressed. And how can I observe myself, and then with this presence, with this intention, reorganize my state in a way that it serves me and my mission.
No, that's interesting. It's funny because some of the core values that I ascribe to are and this I think would be very interesting, is like freedom is also one of my core values. But I think the other thing that's interesting, it's just a word, right? And it just
It's
means
just a word.
different, it means different things to all of us. So your definition or how you live by freedom is going to be completely different the way I do, which is kind of cool. But
So
I'm
tell me, what is
curious.
yours? I'm curious as well there.
Well, freedom for me really has to do with the more of the financial aspect, or the how I survive, right? Because at the end of the day, all these things we talk about are great, but if you can't pay the bills, if you can't keep the lights on, you know, so for me, freedom really represents being remunerated for the value that I provide and holding to that value. So I'm not gonna, and I know a lot of people in our space will give free coaching hours and they will do things of that nature, and there's a time and a place for that. But at the end of the day, when it comes to clients, I need to be received for the value that I provide, and you have to have um, purpose behind that. And if somebody doesn't see that, then they're probably not the client that you want to be working with, right? So there's always going to be people who are trying to, get the lowest common factor that they can, and there's nothing wrong with that either. But from my perspective, if I'm giving everything that I have of who I am, what I do, how I do it, and I ascribe a certain value to that, I feel it should be reciprocated. So for me, that's freedom. That's what freedom means to me. And from that, I have the opportunity to do other things, right? So I can look at other avenues of my life to explore. I can look at different ways to explore the technical things that I do. It just gives me more freedom to really sort of search and follow certain paths. Whereas, earlier in my life, I didn't have that freedom, and you're sort of, it was very restricting. You have to go certain ways, right? So that's how I define freedom for me. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's what it means
Yeah, that
for me.
makes totally sense. I love that. Thank you for sharing. I think honestly, most of us can very well resonate with this definition of freedom because in fact, the society we're living in this westernized world, is also built this way, right? Like we're all, I don't
Yeah.
want to say we're lazy, but we're all enjoying our standards, especially in countries like the US and Germany. So why would we give up on anything? And if someone is not playing by the rules that we set for us, then let's go somewhere else and find someone who can play with it. I find it very interesting, and I don't want to kind of take the topic somewhere else, but
Hey, listen,
freedom
Lou,
is,
we can go
yeah,
anywhere. We're not held to anything. We can, you
that's
see
awesome.
some of my podcasts, we go all over the place. So
No, I,
wherever
I
we
I
want
know
to
you
go,
had
we
you,
go.
you had a question earlier that you wanted to ask, and then I stopped you of like, what is your definition of freedom? And then now I want to share something. But freedom is the one value that has massively changed in the last 10 years for me. So since I'm on my, let's say, quest of the journey of life and what is my meaning of life and my mission, um, I've been changed from one side of the spectrum. Freedom is being financial freedom, is being empowerment in the way that I can make choices without, being limited in those choices, to a more universal freedom on the other side of the spectrum, which is much more spiritually supported, where I take away the expectation, the standard, and I'm breaking down these walls that I built for myself. Oh, I need to have so much money for my coaching, or I need to have,
Right.
so much success on my social post, or whatever it is. Um, and rather trusting that universal force to care for me, and rather focusing on the process and enjoying that, and then hopefully at the end seeing more, positive effect of what I'm actually hoping to get out of the freedom. And to make this a little more concrete, is like 10 years ago, I've chased successes, achievements, in any kind of form. Okay, whale diving in Mexico, skydiving in Germany, motorcycle license over here. And, it was just one thing after the other where I was proving myself I can go faster, higher, and so forth. And then I started to come to this new understanding of what is the authentic me, what is the soul in me, that and bring this a little more to life. And I went to Goa, to India, did my yoga teacher training. I started to be much more sporty because I wanted to nourish that temple, that body. But even then, I realized, whoa, now I'm teaching 2 hours of yoga next to the full-time job a week. I started to triathlon, which then led me to a full distance Ironman. I was like, wait, I'm putting again a lot of the growth mindset into this new me, and it's not very healthy. And then I started to kind of, yeah, actively tie down that walls in terms of, if you speak about, like, there is two books that I want to refer to. One, evergreen, Brené Brown, Dare to Lead, what are the two things that you want to be famous for, even if, shit is hitting the fan. Um, so if you're leading in an organization, in a family, in wherever community, it doesn't really matter, but people will, if you ask them that know you well, call out the one or two things that you are known for among the community,
Right.
even in times of, kind of when things are going sideways. Um, and this is one thing that has influenced me a lot about like, what do I want to be known for? And it was in my early sales career when I said, okay, let me differentiate as a salesperson. I want to care about the person. I want to show empathy and really, come with an attention to the human being behind that. And so I opened up my calls. Hey, how are you? And some were like, hey, I'm good. And you? And then others were like, oh, bad day. And all these kind of, then started the waterfall. And this was really a way to connect with those people very deeply. And I kept this, let's say more emotional focused attachment in my one-on-ones, in my leadership style, wherever. And people know me now for that. They're like, oh, yeah, Levin, he's caring about the individual. And some are like, he's caring about the individual. It's like stupid, whatever. Like the numbers is what we care about. But others are like, oh yeah, he really cares about his team. And this was one thing that kind of yeah, brought me very far in life. The other book that I want to refer to is something I listened to the audiobook. It was The Surrender Experiment from Michael Singer. And he's one of the people of many out there in so many different schools of thought and schools of life that have identified that inner voice that keeps telling us what to do, what to be afraid of, and what to worry about, in terms of the past, the future, and so forth. And how can we maybe isolate this in a way that we can, shut it down by going into meditation, by going into a different, let's say, maybe lifestyle or kind of a different surrounding. And then eventually he came to the conclusion, surrender, like you cannot really you can't really separate from that voice because it's part of you. There, it's there for a reason. You build it for a reason, right? So let's integrate it. And this integration is kind of what led me to the fact that I realized, okay, this growth is always there. It's just wherever it's coming from, birth or conditioning or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's my engine, I can use it. Like this warrior, when he's getting up in the morning, even after 4 or 5 hours, like I'm hammering out that workout, I'm doing, the family, the business, whatever I want, and it's great. But going consciously then into observing, wait, is this serving me, that situation? Am I maybe, in this state where, I would want to rather, let's say, answer to a certain situation with love, and then being able to choose love in that moment. That is my new understanding of freedom. So whereby
That's
freedom before was I had a fight with my dad about telling him, hey, I'm not studying public policy because I'm not going to earn some money and I'm doing my business degree. And I was like, what is wrong with you? Like I failed so much as a dad because was it because we were poor all the time? It's like, no, dad, it's just like I want to have money because I want to have freedom. I want to do things. I don't want to worry about that. And with my kids and everything, he's like, but just, do what makes you happy. And, I'm a social worker, I never regretted it. And I was like, yeah, but I want to become powerful and rich so I can have an impact. And I chose that path deliberately for that understanding of what most of us would say as freedom. And today I'm thankful for all those experiences. And I feel in order to redefine your values, you need to come to that certain point of fulfillment, saturation, in order to have that freedom to kind of change the meaning. And this is, if you talk about states, whatever, third world countries like India, China, whatsoever, now being future leaders, they, if you tell them, I don't know, now you need to take care of the environment, they're like, why would I? I just want to become rich. I want to take care
yeah.
of my people and so forth. And but then at some point the consciousness arrives, and it's the same with the person who's chasing the millions or billions, and he's like, oh, I just need that more money and then I will be happy. Okay, I have the money, I'm not happy, something's wrong. But at some point, there is the consciousness, and I feel it's so important in our adulthood. And I think this is probably also what you're very much interested into, how different people around the world with different kind of starting points make their life, make their journey through life, and how they change their values. I'm a strong believer into support people in achieving their goals so that they can rewire their consciousness and their interpretation of meaning. And this is
Mm.
why I'm such a big fan of coaching, because even if your goals today are not mine, even if they don't have the same values and ethical standards that I would represent, I know holding you back from those goals would block you in achieving that higher level of consciousness. So I'm a big fan of, if there's this coachee coming in and I feel he's a bit of a jerk and he wants to have that Bugatti or that Ferrari and he just wants to make money and he's cheating on his wife and all these things which I'm not happy with, I know that if I bring him closer to his goals, he can then realize, oh, I'm not that much more happy. And what is even happiness? I'm actually looking for that content and so forth. So I think, yeah, this is really a key point that was very decisive for me in the last 10 years, that you need to hit that next point of saturation and realizing even fulfilling a certain value is not bringing the overall result. And then you can start changing the meaning. And then for me, this was a 180 shift in terms of what freedom means. And the new freedom is like, I can let go of the need to have certain securities and certain walls and rather ease in, yeah, in universal trust that it will be provided as it should be.
When did that shift happen for you? You mentioned that shift. When did that happen for you?
So it was actually on a Tony Robbins seminar in 2017 or something where, I left church. Like I was raised in Christian values. Not that my parents went to church all the time, but, we had a religion or Christian religion education in school. And it was all over because, here in Germany, it's either Catholic or Protestant. And then I felt this is not my understanding of God.
Mm.
And I became this rather, not an antichrist, but somewhat anarchist or
Agnostic?
agnostic. Yeah, that's the right word, exactly. Where I was like, hey, God is not for me because I feel the church with all its rules, its, male dominance and the money-making machine, this is kind of stupid. However, the kind of naive mistake that I made was like, I don't need a God. I'm enough with my growth, my goals, my struggle, and so forth. And I forgot how beautiful it is to be able to have faith into something that's much bigger from a meaning than myself, because it gives me so much a content, but also b so much reassurance in that things will be fine. Even in that moment, it's really hard. It's happening for a reason, and it's happening for me and not to me. And even you know the worst kind of setback is a great learning opportunity, but it's on me to size this and then finding through that seminar actually back into my own story of like, okay, I have a negative belief, I'm not enough, that keeps on my growth to kind of, yeah, let's go
Yeah.
further, let's go harder, let's go stronger. And it came from this, my dad left us when I was 6 with 2 younger brothers, and him leaving the family, starting a new family, somewhat fucked me up.
Um,
And that I was like, oh, I'm not enough to be loved. So I need to do better in that. And that kind of stipulated over the times until I was just chasing records and it didn't make anything good to me. So coming out of that negative belief that I'm not enough and wait, I am enough. And actually, there is a God, but it's my understanding of God, and there is a spirituality that's waiting for me. And then for me, this was yoga and meditation and this turning inside. That actually changed everything. And this is where, the value of love that was in there, but it was somewhat trapped behind that,
yeah.
the heart of stone, where this little me was kind of, the inner child was kind of hurt and protecting itself. That kind of, and yeah, breaking those walls down. I'm still doing that every day. I'm still working hard. These days, I'm having coaches who teach me and coach me on how to feel, actually, process emotions. It's funny how you start with the grow and the Oscar model, and you're like, wow, that's powerful. That's coaching. And then at some point, you're going to an MCC coach, like, forget about anything that you know.
Yeah,
Let's just
yeah.
go to the present and boom, doing something with you. And you're like, oh shit, there's definitely the storm inside that, wow, it makes me really feel uncomfortable. And then this is kind of the journey that I love so much about coaching, and I'm so thankful because, yeah, coaching has changed my life for the better. It has opened up a new consciousness, a new world for me, and this is why it's also my big mission here to make coaching more and more accessible to people out there, no matter if it's in a personal or professional context.
That is amazing. Thank you much. Thank you for sharing that. That is really cool. It's really it's inspiring to hear those journeys. So that's very cool. Can you tell me a little, little bit? So you flashed the shirt there. Was it Coach? What is it called?
Yeah.
Coach. CoachBot.ai. How has your experience led to that?
So I've been somewhat lucky enough to get a business scholarship at a private school, and then there was another MBA-like program, another private school with a scholarship that followed. And I think I just had, the right vita to land a job in Google. And Google has shaped me tremendously in terms of you have an amazing set of colleagues, and they're doing a thing called G2G, Googler to Googler, where they help each other with the skills, the capabilities that they have. One teaches you swimming, another teaches whatever coaches you,
Oh, cool.
another is a yoga teacher. So I was offering my yoga classes for free for colleagues, and um, among the employees, there was already such a high level of high performance culture in many different angles, not just on performance, but also into high reflection culture, high whatever a content culture, if you can call it. Yeah, the
You almost
lifestyle.
can't have one without the other, right? There's got to be the balance there.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you just burn. You burn out, as they say.
Exactly. Yeah. And obviously also Google is investing a lot into their workforce. They have in-house coaches, external programs, and they, have all these crazy seminars that you did there, like workshops that we all know, like Inside Color, but then also they have their inside, or like their internal programs like life design and so forth that they have developed to help their employees, really design a life that perfectly kind of celebrates the career and surrounding, which is family and fulfillment and all these things. But out of this journey, I kind of went on my path of being in technology, and I've been working with hundreds and hundreds of startup companies that have scaled different platforms, apps in the B2C end user, but also in the B2B business space to success and to adoption. And when I trained as a professional coach, it was daunting all the time. Like, how can I scale this? How can I make this bigger than
Yeah.
what it is? And I realized you cannot just throw technology on it and scale it because it's broken inside. Like the coaching market was or is so broken in the way that we as coaches, we're only being billed about 40% of the time we're working. These are the one-on-ones or the group sessions that we're handling. 60% of the time, which is preparing, summaries, follow-ups, check-ins, admin, marketing, program design, all these other things, we're not being paid for. So we have to charge a fairly high price. And this is what you talked earlier about, hey, my
Yeah.
coaching rate has a certain value because I need to finance all of that.
Yeah.
Look at my books, look at my three kids and their education and, my life and my technology, all that stuff that I want to explore. So it comes with a
It's
price.
funny. I think people just think that we just show up as a coach for, an hour, 45, and that's it. They don't understand all the work and the experience. I had to, so I do the PCC from ICF, but up to then, you've got to do all the hours. You have to have supervision. There's so many things that go into being a coach that I don't think people really see. So you're 1,000% correct. I mean, I love the way
How
you
would they?
articulated it. That's awesome.
How would they? Because you cannot bore them in the 30-minute discovery call that you
Yeah.
have with them about, hey, I've done so much work to get my PCC. And they're like, okay, and what is this PCC again?
Yeah, yeah,
Ah,
yeah, yeah.
coach, cool. Yeah, okay. So yeah, I'm always smiling when I see people in coaching, like professional coaches playing that title game. And it's just three letters, ACC, PCC, MCC, but we're building our identities around it. And it matters so much to us, but it's funnily only matters to us. Like I haven't met one single coach that has been asked more than once in their entire coaching career by an individual, not a workplace, about their credentials. Yeah. So all of them
Yeah,
said
yeah.
maybe once in my lifetime. And then, of course, in an organizational world, it does matter what kind of, strengths finder and all that, whatever you're being trained on. But yeah, we're building our identities and our values around these certifications. And they take a bunch of time, and they're depending on where you're coming from. If you've just been fired by a big tech player like Apple, Microsoft, Google, and you got this whatever 2 year salary, okay, why not doing a coaching training? Because
Yeah.
yoga I already did 2 years ago. But like if you are really a passionate junior that wants to become a coach and you don't have the funds and you're investing 10, 15, 20K in your coaching training over months, and then you don't have any income in that time, and then you need to build your website and you kind of need to be SEO relevant and, kind of build that ICP, those programs, build that brand. Like the numbers of how many coaches fail in the first 2 years is just impressive, yeah, in a very negative way. So either you make it and you get to those rates of $250 on average per ICF coaching. And the coaches that I work with, they're doing something between 60, 80 from the very juniors up to 950 if you're based in the Silicon Valley per session. And unfortunately, it's only this minority of maybe 10% who make it out of their first 2, 3 years and establish their practice without having to struggle or hustle in a side job and so forth. But I don't want to go too deep into,
Yeah.
the struggle of coaches. I just realized this market is massively broken because coaches suffer. Coaches also suffer because our new lifestyles, being on our phones for 5 minutes, then doing something else, and then back on the phone, and then the car, and then on the smart speaker over here. Like, we need coaching. That's for sure. The world needs more coaches and more coaching. But how should that work with like, oh, are you free in 2 weeks? We can pencil in that
Yeah.
session. Oh, you need coaching now. Oh no, I don't have time now. And oh, you need coaching in between the sessions. Like, okay, will you pay me for serving you on WhatsApp with these little accountability check-ins? Like,
Right.
it's just the model doesn't work for what we need. And then yeah, combining kind of my ikigai in terms of like, what am I good with?
Yep.
What do I want to do? What does the world need? And what will they pay me for? It was just like, I need to um, infuse technology into the coach's practice, into the everyday of the coach. And of course, the coach can then decide, do I want to use that for my own sake, meaning preparation, summaries, check-ins, follow-ups, or, is this kind of, to really be external to the end client, and the client can be invited to work with the AI coach in that case to kind of, yeah, do sparrings, role plays, check-ins, accountability building, all these things. And now everyone would think, okay, this guy is building technology and scaling it. In fact, I'm learning about how to educate coaches and coachees to become AI literate, and then create this one language, the AI fluency, as I would describe it, in order to have a way of having a solid conversation, a constructive conversation to clarify things like privacy and ethics and
Yeah.
technicalities of AI. And only then comes the maturity of like, okay, I feel I'm prepared now to make a wise decision on which use case do I want to use AI for? What is maybe the vendor I pick? How do I get along about setting this up and integrating into my day to day and making my first baby steps either on my own as a coach or with my clients together? But yeah, I just wanted to make sure that everyone understands the road to using AI, if you want to do it with care and done rightly, is very long because you need to start with the basics. And oftentimes, it's not even AI basics that we're teaching, it's digital
Literacy.
foundations.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the key word that you use there is education, right? Because all of this is out there, but I don't think people are aware of number one, that whole coaching paradigm, right? So there's this whole sort of understanding of what does a coach even do and how do they do it and all that kind of stuff. But and then you layer on the complexity of what can happen, the beauty and the complexity of technology, right? So there's a lot there's potential opportunity that's there, but then we also have to understand where are those guardrails that you alluded to, which I love, the ethics, and all that kind of stuff. How is that coming to play? So I feel like there's this race for AI, race to AI, and I say there's a flight to AI, but I also say there's a flight to humanity. Right, we have to remember that piece of what that is. So
Yeah.
that I think is going to be the more interesting play, as we move forward with the whole emergence of AI and what we do. But we'll it's very difficult to see where we're going to be in 3 months with with this technology. Never mind 6 months or a year ahead. So
Totally. But the closest that we get to tomorrow is today, right?
yeah,
So we
yeah,
can always see what is coming to the surface today that maybe we haven't really figured out. So in the context of my daily work, privacy, we're doing pretty good here in Europe. We have Germany, we have the EU that are protecting us with, something that is more or less comparable with the Californian Act in terms of the privacy standards. And then what we haven't figured out, for example, is ethics. We're all talking
yeah.
about ethics, but no one can really say, what is it? We're not philosophers, and it's way too early to tell what is the impact on society, on education, on our next generations, and so forth, in terms of now AI being around us. But
Well,
coming back to what we
maybe it's
discussed.
time to bring the philosophers in. You know, maybe it's
Absolutely.
time.
And it's happening for sure. I think I haven't heard more coaches talk about philosophy, um, in the last, let's say, 6 months compared to any of the time before together. Like it's people are really turning again to, who actually has some science that can be applied here, in terms of making sense of these very quick developments. And what I wanted to also reflect or invite people to reflect on is that we're racing for AI, as you say. In fact, we're racing for super intelligence, meaning AGI, the general intelligence that is transferable learning, meaning we're teaching an AI to read a book or to write a book, and then it can use the skill, to also write a PhD because it's close, but it can also, fill a washing machine. Like, how is that? Like, how did that learning shift just happen? Yeah, because it has an intelligence that is, going beyond just a machine that you've taught a certain process, and then,
Right.
it can only do that. So, um, and it's similar to what I've discussed earlier about when we want to raise our consciousness, if we want to be able to rewire our inner game, our values, we need to come to that point of saturation where we potentially realize, oh, achieving AGI or the superintelligence did not solve the problems about climate change or something
Yeah.
else. So,
Yeah.
but we need to first get there to all come to that conclusion. Okay, now we have it, and we realize, we still have very similar problems than before. So how do we solve them? Maybe not with spinning up more nuclear power plants and using more compute energy. Maybe there is other ways to get closer to that. I don't know. Like, these are just assumptions, but I just believe the faster we are at AGI, the better it is for humanity, because only then we can judge, is this really solving all the problems that they are investing billions and billions into right now,
Yeah, but I
or
don't
do
know if
we
is
really
it
need to change?
is it about solving the problems, or is it about giving us the better tools for us to be able to find those solutions, right? So this, and I love that you bring this up, because this is, I think, where the, not the struggle, but where the discussion is, and bringing in those philosophers and historians to sort of say, well, how, because some people I've talked to, they said, I've seen this story again. Yeah, I've seen this story before. The, internet was going to take over the world, right? The old paperclip, story that about, so, so it's a very interesting time now to see where we are. But I don't want us to lose those things that have brought us to humanity, right? So as I mentioned that earlier, so I do tend to think of those things. It's like we do need the philosophers now. We do need those who talk about ethics now, just as much as those who are talking about the technology. I remember a couple of years ago there was a gentleman, David Lipsky. He's the head of coaching at Samsung,
Mhm.
and he really I spoke with him a couple weeks ago, and I'm hoping to connect with him and do some more the further discussions on this. But he eloquently articulated this in terms of phases. He said, right now we seem to be in a phase one where the technology is, sexy and exciting, and it's, everybody's flocking to it. And with my background as a CPA in business and auditing and understanding all these things, he piqued my curiosity, because when he was articulating the next phase is what do we do after that technology is here. So for me, it's about what are those, and everybody here in the United States, Lewin, you probably understand this, thinks the word regulation is a dirty word. I don't think it is. I think there's something to that needs to be explored, understanding what those ethics are to us, and what does it mean to us. I mean, think of it now. Now I don't call myself a coach anymore, doing. I have to call myself a human coach. What
It's
is
true. And
what does that mean, right? What
it's crazy, right? Yeah. And you need to be able to defend to
yes.
potential new clients, coaches, why they should use a human coach and what are the benefits. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm being asked, why should I use CoachBot if I can use a custom GPT? And the same goes out for like, hey, why should I use you with your assumingly $350 rate if I can use a GPT for free? And we need to
Right.
very honestly reflect about that. What is that value? And then we can come up with things like oh, I can, process emotions like a human, whereby AI can only, it can only simulate this processing learned by, having processed
Yeah.
a large amount of text. And then another point that is coming up over and over again is like, I have ethics. But then what are ethics? Because ethics, to me, in a very easy way so I can explain it to my kids, would be like, hey, we all have a certain set of values. These are things that are important to us and that we, kind of
Exactly.
protect. And we can put values into an AI prompting, right? We can say, hey, integrity is very important, reflection is very important, transparency is very important. So please, when you answer, say, hey, I'm about 60% sure. Now GPT is not doing a good job in that, but we could prompt these systems in that way. But so yeah, this is kind of again kind of where most of the conversations then end up with, aha, nice. So AI is here to challenge us what actually makes us human and cannot be
Yeah.
replaced by AI. And then, of course, what we don't know is like how fast will AI evolve in terms of, understanding human language, also understanding our facial recognition through video in terms of, yeah, is this
Yeah,
person now thinking?
all that is
Yeah.
here. And the question that I am, not that I shouldn't say I'm struggling with, the one question I'm exploring is, and I said it too earlier, where is, where I think there's going to be a flight to humanity. I think
Mhm.
people are going to start exploring this more, and you're already hearing this, and you've already said it. I think it's just going to intensify over the next couple, because we always go like a spectrum, right? We always go all the way to one way, and then we tend to go all the way in the other way, and then eventually we start to find our way in the middle. I think now we're at one direction, right? We're at one ending, and it's going to swing the other way. People are going to say, oh, AI is too much, and where's our humanity and all this stuff. And I think eventually it'll come to the middle. So it's such a confusing topic though right now, or not topic right now though, isn't it?
I don't know. I'm not sure if it's confusing or not. Like for me, not because I'm reading it every day. But like there's a futurist called Amy Webb. I can highly recommend check her out, and she's talking about the super technology cycle that we're currently in. And there's three fundamental tech shifts that will change the way we live, we kind of experience our daily lives. And it's not just AI, it's also sensors because they're being much more advanced than before, and it's biotech, our
Yeah.
ability to kind of manipulate DNA and so forth. And all of that three together will lead to fundamental shifts in states, the way we work, and so forth. And she's also foreseeing about 300 million jobs being replaced by AI over the
We're already
years to come.
seeing that. You just look at the business section any day, and they're already talking
Crazy,
about
right?
that.
Yeah. So it's interesting in terms of using philosophers and historians to look into what has happened, when the database was out and everyone said, wow, my gosh, what we can change so many things, same for the steam engine and the car.
Yeah.
And I think even when the bicycle came out, people were like, oh my god,
Well,
like it changed everything.
think about it from a historical perspective. At least in the United States, there was the agricultural industry, right? So where everybody was a farmer, there was doing that, and then the machine came in, and then you had the industrial age, right? And then that transpired for a tremendous amount of time. Then we had the information age with the internet, right? And everything moved from that perspective. And I don't know what they're calling this phase, but it's something new that we're experiencing, and there's wisdom and how it has affected us from a human from a humanity perspective
Yeah,
that's there. I think we just need to remind ourselves of that and not get too caught up on all the shiny
true,
flashy things, right? Because
true.
Amy Webb and all those future technologists, the pace of change that's happening now, I don't know if there's any futurists that can really grapple with that. And it almost goes back to those, for me, it goes back to those fundamentals. And as you said earlier, I think it almost can be simply boiled down to your, what we said earlier. It's those values that show up there. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm on
no,
my soapbox
100%.
again. I'm sorry, Lewin. I
No,
apologize.
and this is the same point that I wanted to make. I'm thinking that the tectonic shift that we're currently undergoing with AI is, it's a magnitude of what we've seen with bringing the World Wide Web to life
Yeah.
over the last years, right? Or the last decade. So I just want to say, the steam engine has changed massively the economy and the prosperity in our westernized world. Um, the internet has changed the way we live, we connect, we kind of, we think. Um, and now I think this combination of, the ability to put in the first 7 years of our lives a chip that's linked to the brain, whatever Neuralingo we call it, that is, where the brain is so neuroplastic in a way that it can absorb this piece of technology as if it would be something on our own, and we're growing up with the the understanding of our system that this is part of us. It doesn't feel like something we're implementing or like we're implanting. It's part of our system, and we're learning to use it. And then imagine through that Neuralink, having all the biometric data going into medical assessments, being able to access information from the World Wide Web, being able to navigate machines through LAMs, large action models, where, let's say, oh, I wanted to send that email campaign to, the 100 futurists out there that are, and boom, it's being executed because
Yeah,
it's like, holy freaking cow, like, we're getting to a level of superhumanity that brings so many challenges with in terms of who controls and who benefits from the technology. But
yeah.
we're not going into this conversation today. That's a totally different beast. But I really love spending, maybe the last couple of minutes on what can we now do as parents, as coaches, as coaches, as human beings that have a certain set of values that are now being totally kind of
Yeah, I
scrambled
think
by
I think the
the
nature of
injection of AI.
coaching, the
Yeah.
nature of coaching may change as well. Like the how we define what a coach is and what a coach does could potentially be different also. But I do want to be respectful of your time as well. But there was a couple of things I'm really curious about. Um, and one of them is who are some of those influences or those heroes that you may have had through your life? And it doesn't have to be quote unquote a hero, but somebody who maybe has impacted you in
Mhm.
a way that maybe have enhanced or changed your life?
Mhm. There's many that I would like to call out, but there is only one that has touched me so purely that I can recommend him with all my heart and soul, and that's an Indian person, Yogananda, that I've read books about, and he's unfortunately no longer alive, but his spirit and his work, is in so many organizations that are teaching and practicing all around the world. So if you have a chance to read his book, The Autobiography of a Yogi, is a very light book, is not taking too much time, and he's working a lot with metaphors to explain, his lifestyle and how we can learn from, let's say, Eastern philosophy and especially Indian traditions in our modern, chaotic, westernized
What
worlds.
was
And
the name of that book again?
the autobiography of a yogi. And this one is really, it's pure bliss to me. It's like sometimes you're like reading something like, really, and sometimes like, oh wow, what a beautiful story, and you're crying. And this is such a nice gateway into potentially a world that has so far been close to you because it has not been taught at school. Your parents did not read any of that literature, but it brought me to so many other people like Sadhguru and other kind of philosophy, yeah, people that are kind of active in the space of philosophy. It's much more, it's like yoga, right? It's a
Yeah,
philosophy
yeah.
itself. But yeah, this is definitely something I would recommend people to check out if they haven't heard about it. But I feel by now, I think every fifth person that I speak to about says, "Oh, I've read it. It's amazing." But so it's already kind of part of the typical
Yeah, I
stack
love
that.
this conversation because, well, I don't know if my wife will, because my Amazon cart with my books is starting to increase just from our conversation, which I love.
Yeah,
We talked about
yeah,
books earlier. I love that. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
very
Um,
welcome.
what would be one or two key takeaways you would want somebody to listening to this conversation to have? What would you want them to walk away with?
So we've talked about Brené Brown and her book Dare to Lead. If you haven't read it, the one thing that I remember of having read it 6 years ago, think as a leader, and we all are leaders. Yeah. No one is not a leader. you might not show up always as a leader or as the leader you want, but we are all leaders at work, in private, at our families, in nature, wherever. So think about the one, two things that characterize you, and that you want to also be known for. And then, build your support system. What do I need to do to protect myself and those values so I can be true to those values? For me, integrity is very up high on the list, but it's causing a lot of friction because sometimes, I don't want to use this vendor, technology vendor like Google, because I know they're taking all that data. Nevertheless, I use them all day long. What is that doing with my integrity? That's kind of taking all that breath away. So yeah, it's really important that we then come clear about what can we do, the decisions to support us, and then also making tough decisions, maybe just saying, okay, I cannot get rid of this technology vendor Google. Nevertheless, integrity is important, and especially in these areas of my life. And I can just relate to my own story. This has given me so much energy back and resources that I can use wisely for my personal life and caring about others. That, yeah, please check on your key values and see where are those energy monsters in your day. So maybe you can, yeah, rearrange, reorder, rewire.
I love the energy monsters. That's awesome. Where could people learn a little bit more about you and your company and some of those things that you could do? Where should we point them to? I want to make sure that people have an opportunity to hear more about some of the amazing things that you are working on.
So if you're a coach or an L&D professional, I highly recommend the community called Viva la Coaching. It's a community led by people like David Drake, Jonathan Wright, Rebecca Rutschman, and many other genius people that are really good when it comes to coaching, but also things like AI, data compliance, and everything that is part of that package. So if you join them, you will surely also learn more about CoachBot.ai. We are this platform for coaches to build ethical AI coaching products that can serve their coaching practice and their end clients. If you are no coach, but you still want to learn more, then feel free to visit our website, CoachBot.ai, and test, our AI coaching platform for free, just to get a feeling of like, what is the difference talking to a professionally built AI coach versus doing something that we consider is coaching with our GPT.
Mm. Very cool. I can't thank you enough for this time. This was really cool, and we touched on so many topics. I have a funny feeling, if we talk again, and hopefully we do, it's
Hopefully.
going to be very. We probably gonna have many conversations on the different topics they had. So thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me. It was beautiful.